Welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, my name's Andrew, and today's video is going to be on the 5 tools that I would highly recommend for any homeowner that's looking to get into DIY or just home improvement projects in general. The way I compiled this list was actually based on what I reach for most and the 5 tools that were the first things that I purchased as a homeowner and just starting to get into the trades. It's not the 5 best tools or the 5 must-have tools. It's honestly just the 5 tools that are the most versatile and the things that you will need if you're looking to start doing some projects. When you first get to the store and you're looking at tools and trying to decide which to buy, it can be super intimidating because there's walls of different colors, different brands, different battery sizes. I understand it can be very hard to decide. Behind me, you can see it's primarily Milwaukee. There are some other brands up here such as Senko, which is another phenomenal tool brand. I have other brands such as Bosch, Makita, which I use all the time as well. There's lots of great tools out there, whether it's Milwaukee, Bosch, DeWalt, Ryobi. If you can try out some different tools and get a feel for them, because some of them are shaped different, some of them are heavier, some of them are lighter. It all depends on what you prefer. At the end of the day, most of the tools operate the same. They have a warranty and they do the same job. It's just a different color. The number 1 tool on my list is kind of 2 tools, but they're typically sold as a combo pack. So that would be your drill and your driver. There's a few differences between a drill and a driver. Typically a driver is used for putting in screws, lag bolts, things like that, because as it gets harder to turn, the torque kind of speeds up and it drives it in. So if you've heard somebody using a driver before and it sounds like they're stripping the screw, that would be why, because it kind of hammers it in as it gets harder to turn, which helps it. There's a few different types that you could buy. There are brushless, which basically what it means is there's no brushes on the motor and the drill lasts longer. It doesn't heat up as much. They're better overall. That's what you see here in front of me. And then there's the brushed ones, which they're a little bit cheaper. You can go with that, but I would recommend looking at the brushless. When it comes to the drill, there's a few different types of drills too. This drill is a drill and hammer drill. It has a metal chuck and the chuck is a 1/2 inch. I would recommend going with the 1/2 inch chuck because if you don't, it kind of limits you to what kind of bits you can use and you'll have to upgrade pretty quickly afterwards. Going off of that, there's different types of batteries that you can get depending on the line of tools you're purchasing. There's 12 volt, 18 volt, 20 volt, and basically up from there. Milwaukee has 2 different lines of these smaller tools, the M12, which is 12 volt, and the M18, which is the 18 volt. What you see here is the 18 volt. It all depends on what you're going to be using the tools for and how heavy duty you need them to be. So for me, I purchased the 18 volt because it's a larger capacity battery. They have more power, which I would rather have the extra power and not need it than not have it and have to upgrade my tools in the future. You'll see on some of the batteries, they'll have different numbers as well, ranging from 4 to 5, 6, 8, and that's the amp hour, and that's the capacity of the battery. So basically, the bigger number, the bigger the battery will be, and the more capacity it can hold, it will last longer. You won't have to charge it and change it as much. But with that said, the larger capacity batteries are also heavier and they're bigger. So it all depends on what you're going to be using the tools for. I think for a drill, minimum a 4 amp battery will last you all day for basically what you're doing. And then the larger tools, which I'll be showing you shortly, you're gonna want a 6 or 8 amp battery for those. So the reason these 2 tools are on my list is because these are the 2 things that I use the most. Whether it's at home or on the job, I'm always using both these tools. They come in super handy. The impact driver, I mean, for assembling furniture, pocket screws, hanging pictures, screwing in drywall, anything that you're doing, you're pretty much gonna be reaching for this. In this drill, it's great for drilling pilot holes, pre-drilling the pocket screws. I use it for mixing paints. If I have to drill a large hole, I'll use this drill for putting in tapcons in concrete or drilling through concrete with a concrete bit. I use this drill. So these are 2 tools that you definitely want. Now, before I get to the second tool, I just want to mention that one of the most intimidating things that I found was the purchase price or the cost of these tools in general. That will definitely impact your decision on what you purchase based on budget and just what you can afford and feel comfortable spending. Tools are a large investment and you want to make sure you're making the right choice when you buy them. So I would not recommend going for the cheapest ones you can find. I would just try and find the best bang for your buck. And with that being said, that brings me to today's sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of creative classes in countless categories ranging from beginner to advanced, so there really is something for everyone. As you guys know, we love Skillshare, and I've recently been taking classes on video editing to improve my YouTube channel, and most recently I started taking classes on investing. One course that I found extremely informative was Stock Market Investing Mastery by Griffin Milks. Just like tools being a long-term investment, I have always wanted to learn more about stocks so that I can hopefully invest for my future retirement. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a free month trial of Skillshare. The next tool on my list is the circular saw because, again, you're going to need something to cut your material, and a circular saw is the quickest and easiest way to do it. There is many different types of circular saws on the market. This saw here, they call it a side handle or side motor, which is a more traditional style saw. These two here are the rear handle, or also referred to as the worm drive. These are a little bit more industrial, heavy duty. They tend to have more power than the traditional side mount motor. And there's also different size blades that you can get for the saws. So these two saws here are your traditional 7 1/4 inch circular saw, and this one here is a 6 1/4 inch blade. I would recommend going with a 7 1/4 inch blade because those blades are a lot easier to find and they're interchangeable with other saws that you might purchase in the future. And with the larger blades, you'll have a deeper cut capacity, and if you're cutting on an angle, you'll also be able to cut a little bit deeper. If you're looking at getting a circular saw, I would recommend a 7 1/4 inch circular saw. Again, most of these tools I'm showing you are cordless and Milwaukee, but this is the corded circular saw made by the brand Skill Saw. This is actually the first saw that I ever purchased, probably 15 years ago now. I still use this saw from time to time because with it being corded, it just kind of gives you that continuous power and there's almost no chance of it bogging down. With this saw, it's really good, but you just sometimes can't compare it to a corded tool. So I use both. So it's totally up to you what you're looking at getting. If you're looking for completely cordless and you're sticking with one line, I would say just get the matching tool to the brand that you're purchasing for all your other tools. The reason why circular saw is on my list is because, again, that is another tool that I use almost daily at home and on the job, from ripping down sheet goods to cutting 2x4s, 2x6s for framing. You're basically going to be using your circular saw just as much as you're using your drill, because most of the things you'll be screwing together you will need to cut. The batteries I use for these saws are the larger amp hour batteries. I like to use the 8 amp hour batteries in these because it gives you that extra power you need for ripping material, and they last a lot longer because a tool like this takes more power to use than a drill. So that's why I like to have those larger capacity batteries for these types of tools. The number 3 tool on my list is the MITRE saw. You're probably thinking, if you have a circular saw, why do you need a MITRE saw? That's a great question. The MITRE saw is more precise and consistent. So if you have to cut a bunch of material all the exact same length, or on say a 45 or any other degree angle, that's where you're gonna use your MITRE saw. I use the MITRE saw all the time for cutting finished material like trim, crown molding, doorstop, things like that, because with the MITRE saw, it's super precise. You can cut those fine degree angles and it's super consistent. Also with a MITRE saw, usually you will purchase a stand with it. So you're actually standing up. The material is kind of on a table or on the stand, and you can fine tune and cut it exactly how you need, rather than with a circular saw having to cut the material while you're holding it in your hand, trying to keep everything straight. With the MITRE saws, a lot of them are dual bevel compound MITRE saws, which means that the table itself rotates both directions, usually 45 degrees, and the blade will also tilt right to left as well. So for crown molding in particular, you need that dual compound cut, and that's where these saws come in handy. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I have a lot of Milwaukee tools, but this here is a Bosch. So this is the first miter saw that I purchased. It's the corded 12-inch Bosch miter saw. It's the zero clearance, so it does slide, but on the back, it doesn't take up any extra room. This is an excellent miter saw. It's kind of expensive, but worth the money if you're going to be doing the larger trim and larger crown molding, because it does give you that extra cut capacity with the 12-inch blade. I would highly recommend this saw if you're going to be doing a lot of trim work, things like that. The downside is it's very heavy because of how big it is. So if you don't need that cut capacity, it's really hard to lug it around and move it when you need to. That's where a smaller saw like this comes in. This is the 7¼ inch Milwaukee cordless miter saw. And one of the main reasons why earlier when I was talking about the circular saws, I mentioned purchasing one with a 7¼ inch blade is because if you do end up getting a miter saw, you can get the 7¼ inch miter saw, which makes those blades interchangeable. And with the smaller miter saw, the smaller blades are a lot cheaper as well. So if you don't need that large cut capacity, you're just doing smaller trim, things like that, this saw is great. It also slides. It does everything that this saw does, just on a smaller scale. With this saw being cordless, I tend to use a either 5 amp or 8 amp battery, and that does just fine. So again, if you are going to be using these tools, you might want to pick up some of the larger capacity batteries. While I keep talking about batteries, I should also mention that a lot of the cordless tools can be purchased as a bare tool or as a combo or a kit, which comes with a battery or 2 batteries and a charger. The tool store that I specifically shop at, they usually have a lot of promotions going on where if you buy 3 bare tools, they will throw in a charger and 2 batteries. Because if you're going to be buying these tools all separately, you'll end up having 8 chargers, and you don't really need 8 chargers. You're not usually charging all your batteries at the same time. So sometimes it's nice, and it is cheaper to buy the bare tool if you start having extra batteries, or if there's a promotion going on where you can buy a couple, let's say where I buy them, 3 tools, you get a free battery. So always look out for things like that. The 4th tool on my list will be a brad nailer. Now there's also different types of brad nailers that you could purchase. There's 18 gauge and 16 gauge. If you don't know the difference between gauges, the lower the gauge, the thicker the nail. So the heavier gauge it is, which sounds kind of funny because you would think the larger number means it's bigger, but it's actually the opposite. So you'll probably be looking at purchasing an 18 gauge nailer for basic trim in your home. The 2 most common types of brad nailers will be battery operated or pneumatic, which means by air and a compressor. I don't like dragging a hose around an entire house if I'm doing all the trim. So that's why I have the cordless, which is probably what you'll want as well, because you won't have the noise of a compressor. You won't have to drag around a hose, and they're completely oilless as well. There's 2 different brands here in front of me. There's the Ryobi and the Milwaukee. I've used both, and I can honestly say there's not a huge difference between the 2. They work pretty much the exact same. It's just I have more batteries and I typically use Milwaukee, so this is the one I use the most. But there's honestly absolutely nothing wrong with this tool here. My first brad nailer was a pass load that lasted honestly not very long. It was a pneumatic one and the firing pin broke. The second one I purchased a rigid because it was on sale and I needed one because that one broke. That lasted a really long time. I actually ended up selling it shortly after I purchased this nailer because I just didn't use it anymore because I didn't want to use a compressor. It's up to you, whichever one you choose. The pneumatic ones tend to be a little bit cheaper, but if you're already on a battery platform and you have batteries, you could probably purchase the bare tool for an affordable price. The brad nailer will come in super handy for if you are nailing trim, such as baseboard or door and window casing. If you want to do some sort of board and batten or accent wall in your home, you'll want to use a brad nailer so you're not just relying on glue or having to hand nail it. Even assembling cabinets, if you're just building basic cabinets, the brad nailer will come in handy to act kind of as a clamp to let the glue dry and to keep things kind of locked in where they need to be. There's tons of uses for the brad nailer, so I know as a homeowner you will want one of these if you're doing DIY projects. The last item on my list is the cordless sander, and the reason why it is cordless that I'm recommending is because it's perfect for those smaller DIY projects, cabinet doors, little small projects, things like that, that this video is kind of tailored to. So as a DIYer or home improvement renovator, a cordless sander will definitely want to be on your list. It comes in super handy for rounding over edges, smoothing out the surface on projects. There's a few different variations of sanders out there. This one has a disc, it's round. There's ones that also have a sticky pad, which I would not recommend. And I would recommend to get the random orbital sander because it does a much better job than just the square pads, because it's random orbital and just the design of it, it seems to take all the sand marks out much better and cleaner. When it comes to choosing a sander, that is something I would not recommend cheaping out on or getting the cheapest one you can find, because they will not last long and they won't do a great job. And the sanding is kind of the last step of your project before you're gonna apply your finish coat, which is the most important part, because if it's not sanded and all the marks aren't out, you'll see that when you finish your projects. So this is definitely a tool that you will want, and you will want to invest in it because it will last you a long time. It has so many different uses: rounding over the edges of your project if you don't have a router, cleaning up the mill marks and the saw marks, things like that. You will always reach for this. So that is definitely a tool you're going to want. So there you have it. Those are the 5 tools that I would highly recommend for any homeowner that's looking to get into DIY and tackle their own projects. Again, in this video, most of the tools were Milwaukee, but don't be hesitant to branch out, get other tools, look at other brands. This isn't tailored just for people looking for Milwaukee. A lot of the tools are very similar. They operate very similar. It's just a different name and a different color. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, there's a lot of other videos on my channel of me actually using these tools and tool reviews. So if you'd like to see more, you can go check them out there. And if you have any other video ideas or tool reviews that you'd like to see, you can leave it in the comments and I will for sure check it out.